What if I told you that the reason your stubborn belly fat refuses to budge has absolutely nothing to do with your willpower, your discipline, or even the meal plan you've been following religiously for months? What if the real problem isn't about counting calories, cutting carbs, or spending more time at the gym, but instead comes down to a single moment in your day that most people completely overlook? This might sound impossible, especially after everything you've been told about weight loss, but once you understand what's really happening inside your body during this critical window, you'll never look at fat loss the same way again. The truth is, your body has been trying to tell you something important all along, and the answer has been hiding in plain sight. For decades, we've been fed the same simple story about how fat loss works. It's just math, they said. Calories in versus calories out. Eat a little less, move a little more, and eventually the weight will come off. It sounds logical, doesn't it? But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to talk about. If fat loss were really that simple, if it were just basic arithmetic, then far more people would be walking around lean, healthy, and confident right now. The gyms would be filled with success stories instead of people spinning their wheels on treadmills, wondering why nothing is changing despite all their effort. Modern metabolic science is quietly exposing a massive flaw in this outdated belief system, and once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. The realization changes everything. Your body is not a calculator sitting on a desk, coldly adding and subtracting numbers. It's a rhythmic, time-driven biological system that has been carefully designed over thousands of years to follow very specific patterns. Patterns that existed long before anyone invented gyms, meal tracking apps, or the concept of late-night snacking. When you respect those patterns and work with them, your body responds beautifully. But when those patterns are ignored, day after day, week after week, something interesting happens. Your body doesn't rebel loudly or send you angry messages. It doesn't quit on you. Instead, it adapts quietly in the background. It slows down fat burning to protect itself. It starts guarding stored energy, especially the dangerous fat packed around your abdomen, and it does all of this without ever asking for your permission or giving you a warning sign. Here's the part that most people completely miss, and it's the key to understanding why everything you've tried might have failed up until now. Fat loss doesn't actually fail during the day when you're busy, active, and making all those conscious decisions about what to eat. It fails at night. It fails during a very specific, narrow window of time when your hormones are having a quiet conversation with your metabolism, deciding whether your body will spend the next several hours repairing itself, burning stored fat, and resetting for the next day, or whether it will shift into protection mode, storing energy and defending what it already has. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what that window is, why one seemingly harmless habit shuts it down completely every single night, and how aligning with your body's internal clock can fundamentally change the way fat loss feels without forcing you to add more effort, more restriction, or more suffering to your day. If you've ever felt genuinely frustrated watching the scale refuse to budge week after week, or if you've stared at your waistline in the mirror wondering why it looks exactly the same despite doing everything the experts told you to do, there's something critically important you need to hear. Right now. This isn't a discipline problem. It's not happening because you're lazy, because you lack consistency, or because you don't have enough motivation to see things through. Your body isn't broken, and I need you to understand this clearly. It isn't working against you. It's doing precisely what it was designed to do. The human body evolved to survive in a world that was ruled by natural light and darkness, by cycles of activity and rest that were predictable and consistent. Long before food became available 24 hours a day at every corner store and drive-through, your metabolism learned to anticipate when energy would be coming in and when it wouldn't. When those expectations are met, when your body gets the signals it's waiting for, the entire system runs smoothly like a well-oiled machine. Hormones communicate clearly. Fat gets released when it's supposed to. Energy flows where it's needed. But when those expectations are constantly ignored, when your eating patterns become chaotic and unpredictable, your body quietly shifts into a different mode entirely. It moves into protection mode. Fat burning slows down to a crawl. Storage becomes the overwhelming priority. And all of this happens automatically, deep inside your cells, completely outside of your conscious control. This is exactly why simply eating clean foods or cutting your calories often stops working after a while, leaving you confused and demoralized. Your metabolism doesn't just respond to what you eat or how much you eat. It responds powerfully to when you eat, to the timing and rhythm of your feeding patterns. And when food keeps arriving late into the evening, when snacks and desserts and second dinners keep showing up after dark, your internal clock never gets the clear signal it needs to switch modes. The problem isn't necessarily that you're eating too much total food. The deeper problem is that your body never gets a true break from processing, never gets that quiet space it desperately needs to shift gears and start burning what it's been storing. That critical shift, the one that changes everything, begins at a moment so ordinary and unremarkable that it's incredibly easy to overlook. It happens when you finish your last meal of the day, not when you finally fall asleep hours later, not when you wake up the next morning, but right when your body receives the signal that food has stopped coming in. This isn't about finding some magic hour on the clock or following a rigid rule that applies to everyone exactly the same way. It's about giving your metabolism enough quiet, uninterrupted time to change gears, to transition from one mode of operation to another. When eating ends earlier in the evening, digestion gets a valuable head start on finishing its work. Blood sugar rises naturally after your meal. Insulin does its job of shepherding that energy into your cells, and then, and this is the critically important part, insulin actually gets the chance to step back and lower. That window of time between your final bite of food and the moment you go to bed is where metabolic direction gets decided for the entire night. If food keeps arriving late, if you're snacking at 10 or 11 at night, the system stays perpetually busy, constantly processing, never resting. But if food stops coming in earlier, if you create that buffer, something very different begins to unfold in your body. This doesn't mean that everyone on the planet must stop eating at the exact same clock time like it's some kind of universal law. Bodies are individual. Schedules vary wildly. Some people work night shifts. Some people train late. What actually matters, what makes the real difference, is creating a consistent buffer of time, several uninterrupted hours where your body isn't being asked to process new incoming energy. That buffer is the handshake, the agreement between your daily habits and your hormones. And once that buffer is in place and becomes consistent, once your body learns it can trust that pattern, the rest of the night stops working against you and starts working quietly, powerfully in your favor. Once that final meal is behind you and the kitchen is closed for the night, your body enters a short but incredibly important transition phase that most people never even know exists. For the next few hours, digestion is still active and working. Glucose is moving through your bloodstream. Insulin steps in to guide that energy into your cells where it can be used or stored. This is completely normal. This is healthy. The problem isn't insulin itself, which is often demonized unfairly. The problem is how long insulin is forced to stay on duty, how long it remains elevated in your bloodstream. Insulin has a second role that most people never hear about in popular fitness content. It's a storage hormone. While insulin is elevated and active, fat burning is effectively paused, put on hold. Your body simply will not tap into stored energy while new energy is still being processed and dealt with. It doesn't make biological sense to burn fat when food is actively coming in. So if food keeps arriving late into the night, if you're having snacks at 9, dessert at 10, a little bite of something at 11, that pause in fat burning stretches on and on. Fat burning stays locked down, sometimes well past midnight, sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning. But when eating ends earlier in the evening, insulin finally gets to clock out. Blood sugar clears from your system. The entire metabolic system quiets down like a city going to sleep. This is the precise moment when your body switches from consumption mode, where it's focused on taking in and storing energy, to maintenance mode, where it can finally start using what it's stored. It's subtle, almost unnoticeable from the outside, but metabolically speaking, it's absolutely huge. While most people are unknowingly extending this insulin phase with late-night eating, completely unaware of what they're doing to themselves, your body is preparing for something entirely different. Because as insulin falls and returns to baseline, another signal begins to rise in your system. And that signal doesn't just affect your sleep quality. It determines how your body handles energy for the rest of the night. As the night deepens and darkness settles in, another hormone quietly enters the picture, shifting the entire landscape of your metabolism. Around the time the lights dim and the day winds down naturally, your brain begins releasing melatonin from a small gland called the pineal gland. Most people know melatonin only as the sleep hormone, the thing that makes you feel drowsy and ready for bed, but that's only part of the story. Melatonin also fundamentally reshapes how your metabolism behaves after dark, and this is where things get really interesting. Here's the key detail that almost no one talks about, the detail that explains so much about why late-night eating sabotages your results. Melatonin and insulin were never meant to operate at the same time in your body. From an evolutionary standpoint, from the way your body was designed over thousands of years, eating was supposed to happen during daylight hours when you were active and moving, while nighttime was reserved exclusively for rest, repair, and energy conservation. So when melatonin rises naturally as the sun goes down, it sends a very clear message to every cell in your body: slow things down, shift into night mode. When this happens, insulin sensitivity naturally drops. Your system becomes far less efficient at handling incoming sugar and carbohydrates. This is where late-night eating quietly backfires in a way that most people never connect. When food shows up during this window, when you're eating while melatonin is high, insulin has to work against the grain, against the natural rhythm of your biology. It moves slower than it should. Blood sugar lingers in your bloodstream longer than it's supposed to. Inflammation rises just enough to matter, just enough to cause problems over time. And eventually, that excess energy that your body doesn't know what to do with gets routed to the easiest, most convenient storage location, which happens to be the deep abdominal fat that your body naturally prefers to protect. But when eating ends earlier in the evening, when you finish dinner by 7 or 8 and don't eat again until morning, this hormonal clash never happens. By the time melatonin is high and doing its job, insulin is already low and quiet. The body isn't receiving confused, conflicting signals. It isn't metabolically stressed. It's aligned, synchronized, working the way it was designed to work. And in that state of alignment, the night stops being a metabolic liability and starts becoming a powerful advantage. By the time midnight arrives and most people are asleep, something important has changed inside your body if you've stopped eating earlier. You haven't consumed food for several hours now. Insulin has settled back down to its baseline level. The signal to store energy is gone, completely absent. And for the first time since dinner, for the first time in hours, your body is finally free to access what it's been holding on to, what it's been protecting. This is the moment that most people never reach, not because they can't or because it's impossible, but because late-night eating quietly delays it night after night after night without them even realizing what's happening. When insulin stays low for long enough, when it remains at baseline for several consecutive hours, the door to your fat reserves finally opens. And your body doesn't just reach for any random fat when this happens. It targets visceral fat first, preferentially. This is the deep, dangerous fat that's packed around your internal organs, the kind of fat most strongly linked to insulin resistance, heart disease, inflammation, and metabolic dysfunction. It's dangerous for your health, but it's also highly metabolically active, which means your body is actually eager to use it for fuel when the conditions are right. Without incoming glucose arriving from your stomach, without new food to process, your liver shifts gears completely. It begins converting stored fat into usable energy, producing molecules called ketones that keep your brain, heart, and lungs running smoothly and efficiently through the night. This is your internal furnace finally turning on. While you're sleeping peacefully, completely unaware, your body is quietly fueling itself from the very tissue that most people struggle desperately to lose, the fat around their midsection. But this entire process is fragile, more fragile than you might think. A single late-night snack, even a seemingly innocent one, can shut it down completely. If insulin rises again because you ate something, anything, the door to fat burning closes immediately. The furnace never lights. The opportunity passes, wasted, and you have to wait until the next night to try again. Between roughly 2 in the morning and the early hours just before sunrise, something remarkable happens if you've created the right conditions. The body enters a state that most people never experience consistently, a state of deep metabolic efficiency. Insulin is low and stable. Digestion is completely quiet. The nervous system has finally downshifted from the stress and stimulation of the day. This is when fat oxidation, the actual burning of stored fat for energy, becomes remarkably efficient and powerful. Not because you're doing anything, not because of effort or discipline, but simply because nothing is getting in the way anymore. During this precious window, your body isn't distracted by incoming food or by competing hormonal signals pulling it in different directions. It's focused completely on maintenance, on repair, on energy balance. Stored fat becomes the primary fuel source, and especially the fat that's easiest to mobilize, the fat that's most metabolically active. This is exactly why people who align with this rhythm, who eat earlier and create this window consistently, often notice changes in their midsection before anywhere else on their body. The body goes where the metabolic leverage is highest, where it can make the biggest impact. It's important to understand what actually makes this window possible, what creates the conditions for it to happen. It's not just about stopping food intake early, although that's certainly part of it. It's the combination of earlier eating, adequate quality sleep, and a calm nighttime environment with minimal stress and stimulation. When stress hormones are lower, when light exposure is reduced and appropriate for the time of day, the hormonal signals line up naturally without you having to force anything. Nothing needs to be manipulated or controlled. Most fat loss plans fail, and fail predictably, because they ignore this entire phase completely. They focus all their energy on willpower during the day, on making perfect food choices and counting every calorie, and they completely overlook what happens when the body is finally left alone at night to do its work. This window isn't about doing more, adding more effort, more exercise, more restriction. It's about not interrupting what your biology is already naturally prepared to do. As this overnight window continues and deepens, another powerful signal rises quietly in the background, working behind the scenes. Human growth hormone, often called HE, begins to increase significantly during deep sleep. Most people associate growth hormone with youth, with muscle building, or with expensive anti-aging treatments. But its real importance for fat loss shows up right here, right now, during this window. Growth hormone is fundamentally a preservation hormone. It tells your body what to protect and what to use for fuel, what to keep and what to release. When insulin is low and growth hormone is rising, which happens naturally during quality sleep after an earlier eating window, growth hormone sends a very clear, powerful instruction to your metabolism: don't burn muscle tissue. Don't break down vital structures, use stored fat instead. This is why short overnight fasting windows, created simply and naturally by eating earlier in the evening and not snacking late, are so remarkably effective for body composition. They allow growth hormone to do exactly what it was designed to do over millions of years of evolution. It repairs damaged tissue, strengthens bone density, supports skin integrity and healing, and most importantly for our purposes, it guides energy use toward fat stores rather than lean muscle mass. This is also why the morning can feel noticeably different after nights like this. After nights, when you've given your body this gift of time. People often wake up feeling slightly tighter, lighter, or more defined when they look in the mirror. That sensation isn't dehydration or water loss, although that's what many people assume. It's actual remodeling happening at the cellular level. Your body spent hours during the night reallocating resources, clearing out metabolic inefficiencies, and reinforcing what matters most to your survival and function. Nothing extreme happened while you slept. No calories were dramatically slashed. No brutal workouts were added to your routine. Your body simply had enough uninterrupted time to finish the work it's been trying desperately to do all along. The work that keeps getting interrupted by poor timing. By the time morning arrives and sunlight starts filtering through your windows, your body is in a very different physiological state than it would be after a night of late eating and poor sleep. You've gone 12 or more hours without food. Maybe even 14 or 15 if you finish dinner early. Yet something surprising happens when you wake up. Something that contradicts what you might expect. You're not panicked with hunger. That shaky, urgent, almost desperate need to eat immediately just isn't there like you thought it would be. This happens because your hunger hormones, particularly one called ghrelin, respond to rhythm and consistency, not to chaos and randomness. When your body knows and trusts that food reliably stops at night and resumes in the morning, when there's a predictable pattern it can count on, ghrelin stabilizes at healthy levels. Your system trusts that energy is available and accessible because it's been successfully using stored fat all night long. There's no emergency signal firing, no metabolic alarm bells ringing. At the same time, insulin sensitivity is at its absolute peak in the morning after a night like this. When you do finally eat breakfast, your body is completely ready and prepared. Nutrients are absorbed efficiently and effectively. Blood sugar is handled smoothly without dramatic spikes. You're no longer fighting against your metabolism, battling it, trying to force it to cooperate. You're cooperating with it, working as a team. Even processes like cellular cleanup and repair, things called autophagy that clean out damaged proteins and cellular debris, have had proper time to run their course overnight, clearing out the leftovers and waste products from the day before. The result of all this isn't just better fat loss or a smaller number on the scale. It's a genuine sense of calm control, of being in harmony with your body, and that feeling carries into the rest of your day, affecting your energy, your mood, your decision-making. Making this work in your real life doesn't require perfection, doesn't demand discipline challenges, and doesn't involve radical changes that upend your entire lifestyle. In fact, it works best when it feels almost boring, almost too simple to be effective. If you notice mental hunger creeping in later at night, that restless feeling of wanting to eat even though you're not physically hungry, start with something disarmingly simple. A cup of caffeine-free herbal tea, something like chamomile or peppermint, can go a surprisingly long way. The warmth and the ritual of drinking something mimics the sensation of eating and helps settle your nervous system without triggering any insulin response whatsoever. Light matters more than most people realize when it comes to metabolism and hunger. Bright overhead lights blazing late at night send completely the wrong signal to your brain, telling it that it's still daytime, that it should still be active and alert. Dimming the lights after dinner, switching to warmer, softer lighting in the evening hours actively supports melatonin release and helps your body transition naturally into its repair phase. You're not forcing fat loss to happen through willpower. You're simply removing friction, removing the obstacles that have been blocking the process. And if stopping eating earlier feels genuinely hard at first, if it feels like a big ask, don't rush it or force it. Shift gradually and gently. Move dinner back by just 30 minutes for a few nights, let your body adjust, then move it back another 30 minutes. Your body adapts faster than your mind expects it to, faster than you give it credit for. Consistency matters far more than hitting some exact perfect time on the clock every single night. This isn't about restriction or deprivation or punishing yourself. It's about creating enough quiet space, enough metabolic breathing room for your biology to finish its work, to complete the processes it's been trying to run. Once that rhythm is established, once your body learns the pattern and starts to trust it, everything else starts to feel easier. The cravings diminish. The hunger stabilizes. The scale starts moving. And most importantly, you stop feeling like you're fighting a losing battle against your own body. Because finally, for the first time in a long time, you're working with it instead of against it.